we are live. Welcome back to episode 6 of the Overview Effect. I am your host, Dane Jordan, and with me for the 6th time, he's still hanging on here, guys, for some reason. Mr.
Beautiful.
I don't know if you
Thomas
could call
Dunlap.
yourself. I was thinking about this, man. You were looking at the episode 2 and 4, which never made it. This is like the director's cut. I was like, I wonder what Thomas saw in episode 2 that he didn't like, and part of it, from my understanding and from what we discussed, had to do with like the preachiness. Like, we're not here to preach. Like, we figure some things out that work well for us. Maybe it'll work well for you. We recommend trying it, but not saying that this is the way to live. So I think we're on the same page with that. And then one of them was, I was thinking, like, what was, if I had to think about one thing, I was like, all right, we gotta stay humble, man. You can't. I can compliment you. You can't compliment yourself.
Humble pie.
You just call yourself beautiful.
A double dose.
It's like you can think you're beautiful, but I feel like once the moment you call it, I feel like does that not cross the line of humility? To be
I think it probably crosses the line, but it also it gets everybody on the same page, just internally how I'm thinking.
If they were questioning, if they were like, how does Thomas think about himself? All right.
You know, say what you will about him not being very humble, but fuck, he's beautiful.
He is beautiful. Look at that
beautiful son of a bitch.
Look at that raw, scraggly beard. Beautiful man.
I like that though. The director's cut. What was that?
Yeah, like the hidden, like the didn't make the reel, but was still filmed. Was
it the Schneider's cut? Was it for the Justice League?
I don't think I've seen that. No.
Oh, well, oh man, I can't even remember what it is. It's not the Avengers. What's the opposite of the event? The Justice League.
You just said Justice League.
So it was Justice League was originally directed by Zack Snyder. He had some personal conflicts come up in his life where he had to step down as director. And then I think it was one of the Marvel directors that came in. They released the Justice League, and it ends up being kind of a big disappointment for fans. And then there was this rumored Snyder cut, the original director, that was did the Justice League. And then anyways, there's this big rally, online petitions about bring back the Snyder cut, release the Snyder cut.
Okay.
And it actually worked. It actually, the movie executives, everybody got on board, and they actually did a re-release.
They're like, it can't get much worse.
And it actually, I think actually I'd be curious to see what their reaction was to it, in terms of, because it seemed like it was pretty successful in terms of the fans' reaction. They really enjoyed at least I did too. I got some of that, where it was actually a little more enjoyable in terms of how it was stitched together and some of the backstory. So release the Dane and Thomas, the director's cut.
Yes.
Bring it back.
Yeah.
Clamoring. Well, Dane, before we get started, I was thinking about something that was weighing heavily on me.
All right.
So last week we were talking about abortion. There's a couple other topics. I think we somehow got into talking about, was it intelligence being an inevitability? In
you could see the natural overlap between those two topics.
Yeah, you could see how naturally I went to recalling that too, because two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. Abortion, intelligence, inevitability. It's like you can't have one without the other. That's the overview effect for you folks. Go on.
What came in is something that we had a fair amount of conversation on the abortion side of it. I'd say that's probably the majority, but specifically it came out my self-proclaimed title of cockblocker.
Yep.
And I figured what I would like to do is actually set some context, because cockblocking is something I take very seriously. It's something I'm well studied and well versed. Originally, it was people growing up, they want to be astronauts. They, race car drivers. I knew very early on I wanted to be a professional cockblocker.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's a fair amount of academics that actually go into that. I actually, got my degree, my doctorate in cockblocking.
Interesting. Is that a branch is that a branch of mechanical engineering?
Engineering, it's extremely math heavy. So one of the things that I was best known for was actually looking at GDP, so gross domestic product, as a function of cockblocking.
So economics too. Sounds like it has an economic tilt to it as well.
Oh yeah, I mean it's across the spectrum.
What are some of the mathematical anomalies you found in this doctorate degree of cockblocking?
Well, going into that, but
Sure.
Some of the other
Come back
things
to
too,
that,
and we can touch upon it too. But some of the other things were my other contributions there were, CBA, so Cock Blockers Anonymous.
Mm-hmm. So this is something that you're now. So it's flipped from a source of pride to now it's like you a little bit overindulgent in this cock blocking, and you got to kind of like reel it in a little bit.
Yeah, and then there was the Cock Blockers Across America.
Okay.
So
is that just American? Do you think are there any international branches?
There was actually it's not as big across the globe as it is in the United States. It's something that I think is a kind of a grassroots movement here in the United States, in America in particular.
Another reason why I'm proud of being American.
Yeah. I mean, don't tread on me. I'll cock block
thee. Yeah. Pretty sure that's Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah, James Madison or Thomas Jefferson, one of the founding fathers.
Now, was that? Do I understand correctly? That was originally in the first draft of the Constitution. I feel like I remember something about that, and it didn't make the final cut. Is there a story
as a constitutional right? I actually think it was in the Declaration of Independence, where it was actually first hinted upon, the very first kind of inklings of it. As far as we had taxation without representation, and we also
talking without blocking. Yeah,
there it is. But something that's important to remember is that behind every blocked cock is a person, and sometimes it can go too far. And so it was very emotional for me. And in this case, last week we talked about Jeff, and
hope you're doing well, Jeff.
Jeff. And for context, Jeff is our number one fan.
Mm-hmm.
Every episode, all 6 of them now. Writes in every week. You actually get handwritten notes to you and me, Dave. I've actually gotten a Christmas card.
Yeah, it's not even Christmas. It was like Easter. A little off on the dates there, but we still love Jeff. He supports us.
Jeff's a good guy. But something that I'm guilty of is cock blocking Jeff. And
it happens, man.
And I think I've been a little unfair to Jeff. So I want to take this moment. Jeff, I'm truly sorry for the amount of times that I've blocked your cock. I think sometimes we're more called for than others, but there are absolutely a few times that come to mind where that cock did not deserve a block. And I will do better.
Oh, very heartfelt.
Both professionally and personally. So, Jeff, from me to you, may your cock be free.
But let's reel it back a little bit. There are some times he was like, Jeff, come on, man. I know we know him through the small writings that come through. We start to see his personality shine through. But I'm curious about I have a feeling that there's a little bit too much cockage going on without any good Thomas blockage. And I'm trying to think is there like a golden case where you can speak on behalf of Jeff, but it's like a macrocosm of like cocks that generally need to be blocked in America?
Oh,
just America.
That's just America.
Yeah, I mean we're only starting.
I don't know
America, right?
Well, I mean, I think that if you'd actually look back in history, one of the things that's interesting is when you actually look at it from kind of an anthropological view, looking back in history and throughout culture, there have been fits and starts of cock blocking. And it was actually the first case of this was actually the Pythagoreans. Pythagoras.
Yeah.
So there's the Pythagorean theorem, right? And that's a big deal. That was actually one of our kind of fundamental trigonometry identities, geometry. But you also, from that mathematically, you can actually derive a fundamental constant, and you can actually put meaning to it, which outfalls cock blocking.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get. I think we've had a pretty good talk about cock blocking, and I really just wanted to kind of. I feel better in terms of just being able to apologize to Jeff.
Now, was that a physical? I know that this is also a form of art. as well a practice and methodology, if that's correct. Can you tell me about some of the more like controversial methods of cock blocking that you don't really take into consideration because you find yourself true to the calling of cock blocking? If we take the philosophy of Ayn Rand, objectivism, one should pursue the highest art of a form regardless of whether or not it is well received. That is one of her philosophies. So I'm curious if there's been any backlash on you in your pursuit of the ideal and highest definition of cock blocking one can achieve.
Yeah, I mean, there's a fair amount to unpack there, Dane. There's absolutely a fair amount. I would probably say that we could probably devote an entire episode to cock blocking, and cool. I'd be happy to kind of go into that. But I just really wanted to get the Jeff piece off my shoulder.
Cool.
That's a big piece today.
I like that. Thanks for sharing. And Jeff, we hope everything's going good downstairs. Everyone gets their cock blocked every now and then, but the cock needs to recoil and come back to be unblocked at some point in the time in the future. So that is essence of life.
Well, yeah, and I there's a lot of truth behind every cock that's blocked. Remember,
all great men have their cock blocked. There's almost
there's a person.
Yeah, there's a person.
There's a person. There's a
person.
There's
rite
a
of
face.
Passage. Yeah. Nice.
Oh yeah, the Peruvian. There's also the Peruvian cock block.
Ooh, I haven't heard about that one in a while.
Anyways, we'll come back to cock blocking if maybe as another topic if we want to kind of delve into my doctorate or my dissertation on cock blocking. Be happy to kind of just really go through it.
I like that,
especially looking at the gross domestic GDP, gross domestic product.
Now,
that's pretty interesting.
What do you think are like the socioeconomic factors of why, if we look like take a step back from you and your degree, and we look at the sort of macro economic climate of cock blocking across the world? What do you think are some factors that come into play in regards to why, for example, Finland, a very progressive country, Sweden, very progressive, has yet to sort of like nip at the bud here at this brewing cock blocking sort of wave that we see across the world?
The arguments that I've heard against cock blocking is, some of the reasons why it's not actually more widely adopted is around kind of the trampling of fundamental rights. So I think that's a big one in terms of to cock block or to not. That is the question.
But
so I think
we look at
that's
the sex education industry, and Trojan is just a big cock block industry, right? But is a condom not a cock blocker?
Expand on that. Expand on that.
Yeah. So we look at the sexual sort of not necessarily the sexual realm or the sexual vertical. We have lubes, which I would say is not a cock block, but then we have condoms, which are cock block, and that's heralded as the most efficient way and very healthy way of intercourse. But is a condom not a cock block?
You're using it in kind of different, in terms of cock blocking. I think we're actually using it differently. So you view a condom as a cock block.
Is it not?
I wouldn't view a condom as, it literally in terms of you're putting a barrier there. So I guess there is, in the literal sense, it's
so we're talking about abstract. We're talking about more sort of abstract cock blocking. Maybe not so much physical.
This is the cock being blocked.
So that's your art, or is that the Trojan art? Are you more like, no weenie here? Is that your sort of modus operandi? Or are you more so like the sort of social influence technique, where the moment before coitus, you step into the situation and be like, hey, Jeff, this woman here, you guys been dating for some time.
Dane, Jeff asked me to cool it a little bit on terms of the some of the conversation around the.
Okay. We'll move on, Jeff. Not Jeff. Someone else. Jeff a kiss. Someone else. Some completely unrelated person having coitus with a woman. It is consensual. They've had consensual sex before. but your cock blocking sense, that little tingle you probably get, I imagine, it's part of your degree that you get. They train that in you. Goes off, and we have to talk about the criteria behind that cock block, like little tingle alert that you need to get. Like, hey, this is a time for me to step in. I mean, you are the master, the expert on the topic, if I'm not mistaken, right? Were you not the first one to get the doctorate in cock blocking?
I would, yeah. I wouldn't say. I actually
first
think
class.
there's. I would probably say the first widely known in terms of kind of being, you think cock block, you think Thomas, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of just that's changed over time in terms of there were, on the shoulders of great cock blockers, I stand, right? I wasn't the first. I didn't make, some of the great movements in terms of cock blocking history, techniques,
literal
strategies,
or metaphorical movements.
That's exactly right. Anyways. Well, Dane, I think we've probably reached the limit of cock blocking.
I mean, I think it's
conversation.
I think it's a fascinating topic, and I'm kind of glad you brought it to our viewers and to my attention. We've touched on it briefly, not literally, metaphorically, but
more to unpack.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's been good. Sweet.
Anyways, so Dane, what do you got for me? So I went in my whole, in terms of I had kind of my opportunity to apologize to Jeff, give a little bit of background, especially growing up, my passion for cock blocking, doctorate, all that good stuff. But what about you? So what do you got for us this week?
I guess was working out this morning on the topic of cock blocking and was thinking that was listening to some music or was looking for music to listen to, all the usual playlists I had.
To cock block yourself?
Yes. Yep. And this music was talking about, or rather, there's like a motivational podcast on Spotify where it's basically motivational speaking, and all of it, I agreed. I would say like 85% of it resonated with me. And they talk about, this place you need to go, you need to be, you need to become. And I just thought about this like duality between being and becoming. It's almost like this yin and yang on the topic of cock blocking, natural segue. So I don't know. I just kind of thought like, because I know that a quote by Jordan Peterson has I've played in my head before is, it's not okay to be weak. And then on the flip side, you have Eckhart Tolle talking about the power of now, like being where you are right now and being at peace with everything right now. And it seems to almost have this opposing mentality of like, be okay with where you are right now, but also seek to be better. I don't think there's anyone who could disagree with either of those statements, yet they seem to be opposed fundamentally.
It's actually really interesting that you bring that up, because I've kind of started to uncover the same, where I was listening to an audiobook on Nietzsche. He's
Nietzsche. Nice.
Famous. A famous philosopher, a German philosopher. Is that right?
Sounds German.
Philosopher. Somewhere. I shouldn't say German. I don't think it's German. Anyways, he got kind of a bad rap in terms of where a lot of his writings were misconstrued or misinterpreted around the Nazi movement in World War II.
He is German, by the way.
I wanted to say he's Austrian or German, but I'm probably mixing things up. But anyways, he talks a lot about how suffering is important, how embracing the experience of right now, and actually that builds character development, that it makes you better. I think he actually coins the term, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's something like that. He actually kind of made that expression famous. But there's kind of what you're talking about, where it's diametrically opposed, or it seems opposed, when you start thinking about
like Buddhist philosophy, almost.
Yeah, and then I've noticed there's a tinge of that with the meditation practice, where you're trying to actually step away from that. You accept that it's there, but you're not trying to embrace it in terms of like a driving force forward. So there is, and I've actually been kind of stuck on this for a little bit. It's been in the back of my mind One of the reasons I think that I've gone through a pretty significant weight loss, which I'd love to actually talk about sometime, because I think there's a fair amount to actually kind of talk about in that regards. But
Definitely.
I'm 80 pounds in. 80 pounds in. That's pretty good.
Well job.
That's a lot of. Let's see.
That's a adolescent child.
That's almost. I was just going to say that's a midget, but that's probably not politically. That's not the right way to phrase it. There you go. It's a midget off my back. Yeah, little person. But yeah, it's a lot of weight, and one of the things that I think about is that, especially when I'm trying to force myself to go work out every single day, I go for a run. I'm up to I can do 3.2 miles run,
nice,
which is phenomenal for me when you're talking about me being 250 pounds, can barely go for a 45-minute walk without my ankles hurting or my knees hurting. And so now I'm doing that run.
So you're at 160 now ish?
Yeah.
Wow, man. 80 pounds. Cool? That's a lot. Congrats.
Yeah, man. That's a big deal.
Over what time frame?
But let's see. I would probably say we're 7 or 8 months in.
That's pretty quick. That's a lot of weight.
Part of this too is, and I feel fairly confident in terms of I've actually done a little bit of blood work, because I've been pretty aggressive about what my diet. It's not just let's do this let's get to an acceptable weight and let's get back into what I was doing previously. It's this going into this, I kind of accepted it as a lifestyle change.
Oh yeah.
But going back to the suffering bit, in terms of suffering comes in all different degrees, in terms of, in the most extreme cases to the mildest cases. And I think about, every morning when I go for my run, and when I'm actually starting to go for a run, I could just turn around, I could just stop, and I want to go for a run today. And there's this motivation that comes through. You'll be better. You'll be, the fact that you're doing this right now, you'll gain something for it. You need to go through this. This event is important. And it's kind of in that micro, looking at that microscopic level where they're suffering and embracing that and saying that this will make me better. This will make me stronger. It seems really valuable for me as a drive, as a motivation. And on the flip side of that, if I kind of don't look at it that way, I don't get motivated by it. And then I'm not using it as a tool. It's almost like a tool that I have where I can kind of pull out and actually motivate myself to do something with it. So anyways, I don't know. Those are kind of my thoughts on it. I'm happy you brought it up, because I feel that too, where they feel opposed and I'm kind of left in this juxtaposition, or I don't really know necessarily one way or the other. I fall on it because I can kind of go either way.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it's a really cool sort of topic too. What was the book? I know he's written a few books, but what was a book specifically that you started listening to of Nietzsche's?
This one is basically just an overview of his teachings, or his books, basically just his life and his books and his teachings being analyzed. It's through the Great Courses. The Great Courses. Okay. So it's on Audible. Okay. So it basically just goes over some of the first couple sections that we've gone over, some of the misconceptions around Nietzsche, and goes into a little bit as far as some of his famous writings and just deconstructing, because a lot of it's left to interpretation, right? You have what does this really mean, especially if I apply in a modern context, or what was it at the time when it was written, and how has that kind of evolved over time? So there's a lot to unpack there.
Because this is a topic we've discussed before, not on our podcast, but just the fact that meditation, and that's what Eckhart Tolle sort of expounds in his book, is that it's this sort of mentality of stepping away, being aware of your thoughts as much as possible, being aware that your attention may dip back into your thoughts and out of your thoughts, and that's part of the sort of experience of human life and is to be expected, that you have this sort of back and forth of I'm entrenched in my thoughts and now I am taking a step back and aware of my thoughts, the sort of pendulum effect. And he talks about the end of pain and suffering. And then you have Nietzsche, another prolific philosopher, talking about how suffering is essential. And it's almost like you end your suffering, but yet suffering is important. And I think it's this really interesting duality I think it's cool, and I think there's lessons to be learned with both, and I don't think you need to choose one or the other. I think you can have both. You can weigh both in your mind simultaneously without being irrational or illogical. And I guess the way that I relate to both of those is that I think it's, to me, is progressing is addictive. I think anyone who progressed in their life have seen that, oh, wow, I really love the outcome that has arisen because of this growth, because of this progress. I want more. And it's that mindset, like, I really like that I lost this amount of weight. I really like that I lost or gained, this much more in my salary. I really like that I gained this much more in my time. I wrote this, whatever the metric is. There's always this seeking of, I want more. I really liked that. And I think that's, to me, where I can pull in the more Buddhist philosophy of like, okay, sure, you can want more. Just be aware that your desire for more will never be satiated as long as you desire. Because no matter where you are in life, whether you're Elon Musk, one of the richest, if not the richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos, you think they're just going to be done? They don't want anything anymore. They're just going to lay on a couch, have people feed me. Like, I don't want anything more in life. I'm just going to check out until I die. No, of course not.
Doesn't sound bad for a moment. But anyways, yes. But yeah,
of course, relatively. Of course, life is relative. But yeah, and these desires will always come, whether or not it's something as simple as like, getting out of bed and eating, or a bit more complex in terms of relationship goals and self-fulfillment goals. I think that's where the Buddhist philosophy comes into play. Is like, great, if you want to be better, if you want to do good things in this world, fantastic, very noble of you, great, that's a good thing. But also don't cling to this success, because success, all things fade. And that is like the one thing that like Buddhist monks have in I guess their depths of meditation, or just in their depths of meditation, have come to the conclusion that all good things and bad things come and go. Like, life is just a transient feature. We have really high highs, we have low lows, and they all come and go. And that's just life as it is. And that's the fun that I find and the joy that I find in life is this coming and going of good and bad things. And I guess that's a little bit of a loaded statement, because I think the word bad is obviously highly subjective and depends on the person who uses the word. But I won't digress too much down that. But yeah, I think that's, for me, where I find that my balance is like, yeah, it's great. Like, I personally have a goal for my body that will be, I think, at the current rate of progress that I've had over the past 5 years or so of working out, I'll probably attain it within 3 or 4 years, I would say, a little past halfway. And that recognition of like, once I get there, it's not going to just be like, cool, like I'm going to stop working out now. Of course I need to maintain, but my desires will then shift, and it's you change your set point, right? I mean, you're now looking down from a different perch, but doesn't mean you are no longer looking out. It's just a different perch. So that's where I find balance personally with those opposing forces, that you will always be looking forward. The finish line never ends. You never reach the finish line. The closer you get to it, the further it goes away. Or maybe you reach it, but there's no one finish line. Life is a series of finish lines.
I think that insight in itself is that's hard to. I think that takes some self-reflection. I think a lot of people kind of just assume, or your kind of your default mode is their default mode is to say that there is a finish line. There is this goalpost that I'm going to get, and I'm done. I did it. But it doesn't really, work like that. You don't ever, I've never met anybody that's, I did this. I'm truly happy now. I'm good to go. I did it.
Yeah.
I beat life. I beat the game of life. Done.
Because the world keeps turning.
Yeah. So the goals that you have tomorrow, who knows what, tomorrow is, the goals that you have of the future, who knows what they are, what they'll be and how they shape and how they change over time. I think that's all really good insight.
Trying to think what else, if there's anything else on that topic. I don't know. I think we nailed it. And we're very much on the same page with that.
I do like that we both kind of had that, because it was, I don't know, over maybe the course of 3 weeks to a month that I've had kind of this looming in the back of my mind, where especially when I'm getting motivated and pushing myself, and that talk of, yeah, you're going through the shit right now, but you'll be better for this. Use that. It's motivation. And then, at the end of the day, I go do my meditation practice. And I kind of recognized that when I was doing some self-reflection about, these almost seem like they're kind of at odds to each other. So that's interesting that you and me are both kind of on the same page there.
And that's originally the gripe I had with, and this was something that I would say, suffering is a strong word, but an affliction is also, I think, too strong of a word, but something that I think took too much of my attention, I would say, up until my life, up until maybe like a year ago, 6 months ago. I don't know if it was like any revelation per se. I think it was cemented in stone with the power of now, of just like, hey, I need to be more. I had this unfillable hole that was just like, no matter where I progress, no matter where I live, no matter how much money I made or what I did with my career, there's just always like, I need to be better. Like, always need, it's just full. Like, the more I put sand in this hole to fill it, the same, it was as vacant as it was before I put the whole sand. So it was just like this fruitless effort of like, I want this hole to be filled, but the more I fill it, the bigger it gets. And then I just had this recognition of like, I don't need to be anywhere. I can have a desire to go somewhere, to be better, to accomplish more, but I don't need it. It's a subtle but like very important distinction of, I'm content with where I am right now. And I think a lot of that too helps for me when you reflect, like where I've how far I've come, where I am today. Looking back, we were always so focused on looking forward. Like, what am I going to do like the rest of today? What I'm going to do this week? What I'm going to do this next few months? Where's my career going to go? What am I do with my significant other in the next week? Where is that going to go? We're always looking forward. And it's good sometimes to look back, like, look how far we've come. And just think about yourself. Who cares where you fall in the play of everyone else? It's like, doesn't matter. Like, everyone else is on a different journey. You can't look at, this person's, it's an easy trap to fall into. This person's so much further ahead in me in this domain. Like, okay, maybe they've been doing it for more time than you've been alive. It's just like, doesn't even make sense. But it's easy trap to fall to, and even to this day, I sometimes find my thoughts wandering in that direction, but quickly rope them back in and say, I came in. Derive inspiration for other people who may be further down the path, a similar path that you're looking for. But aside from that, like, that's, I think, the only benefit of looking at others and their progress is just use it as a source of inspiration. Look how far this person's gone. You can go that far too, if not farther.
Yeah. I like that, especially the self-reflection. I use that as a tool to say, just like you're talking about, look what you've accomplished, look what you've done. And it's good to reflect on those things. You should take pride in especially your accomplishment. At least for me, that's been really helpful for me, is that I think as I've gotten older, there's this notion that who you are is fixed. That the Thomas of 10 years ago, or, that really that's concreted now, the Thomas who's, 32 now can't be any different. That's just who he is. Even if you want to change, you can't change. And that in itself, that's a fallacy. It doesn't make any sense.
Do you think, I feel like, right? There is a degree of unchangeability. I mean, my mom's always like, oh, that's the same Dane, like closing drawers and like tidying up. In terms of personality, that's a conversation I've had with myself. Like, how much of personality is fluid versus static? Maybe we could put that on the side real quick as you finish your train of thought.
Yeah.
But
no, you're good. I would say that there's kind of this, for the most part, yeah. I mean, in the extremes, in some cases, we can say that genetically, you're kind of given what you've got, and you've got kind of your bounds on either side. You've been developing this personality, or you've been developing up to this point. So you're probably kind of well concreted or rooted with some of the opinions, beliefs, how views on life. So, but any of those, I posit that those can be changed if you really have that will, that power of will. And that's been my experience, is that you can change those things. It doesn't mean that you'll actually make significant that maybe, for the way that Dane, you approach things, I'll never be as good as the way that you approach things with a particular area or the way you think about things. Just like you said, I shouldn't compare myself to you. But the fact is, every single day, just examples of changes, your body's a physical system, and me losing that weight, that's an example of change that I can do. And then the contradiction that I had with myself, I was thinking about, can I actually change the way I think about things? Can I change? Can I be more well-versed in something that really matters to me, which is science, mathematics, the world, how things works? Can I actually learn calculus? I've never learned calculus. Can I actually go through that? Or am I too old for that? Am I too old to be able to pick up those things? And the contradiction for me is I view the brain as a purely physical system. I don't think there's anything special about, that there's going to be some quantum woo-woo or something outside the brain, or there's no spirit. I don't get into any of that. I think it's purely physical. It's just a matter of time, maybe a significant amount of time, but there will be some understanding where we can actually understand how consciousness comes to be, how the brain works, for all intents and purposes.
Are you saying that you believe?
But if I can change, if it's a physical system and I can change my body, then surely I can change my mind. Surely I can change the way I think about things. And an example is, you just imagine that if you don't eat breakfast, if you just imagine that you change your routine, those are making very microscopic, very small changes in your brain, right? You're constantly doing this throughout the day. You're constantly developing and, making those changes. And I view it the same way. I recognize that it is a power of will. It's how do you have the strength? Do you have the motivation, the determination to actually kind of, rubber meets the road and push it? And I think that's a big part of it. Doesn't mean that you'll ever be the greatest. The fact is that intelligence, I would say you can definitely do a lot to improve it, increase it for the most part, but the fact is you're kind of working with the tools that you're given with. But within that, there's a lot of moldability. There's a lot of flexibility there where I think you can improve. And I think you kind of fall victim. A lot of people do that. Oh, I'm just me. I'll never be anything different. It's just the way it is.
What would you say is the role of genetics in that paradigm?
Because that's hard, man. I would probably say it plays a pretty significant. I mean, the fact is, no matter what I do, I'm not going to get taller tomorrow, right? So, I mean, there's definitely some limits in terms of what I can and can't do.
Give up on what you're working on. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, whatever you're working on, resign to your genetics. Don't try. Just blame it on your gene. Bad genes. Got bad genes. No one can argue with you.
Got bad genes. But one of the philosophies I've kind of, or thoughts that I've had that I kind of stuck with me as of late is that, and I've been able to formalize it, is thinking about a life that's worth living for me is one that is is in pursuit of self-improvement. And it's kind of this very kind of general idea, which is, whatever you want to call self-improvement. But if that's something that's always in the back of your mind, how can I be better tomorrow, than today? How can I make sure that I don't waste today and, all those access to resources that I have and all the things that I could be learning or all the things that I could be doing, maybe going for exercise or working out. How am I going to, say that I did a little bit better today than yesterday, or I had a setback today and tomorrow I'll do better, right? So it's something that's very, very motivational for me, is thinking about what can I do to improve? What are the little steps that I can do to make the most of, this gift that is right now, this moment? So it's very strong for me to think about life in terms of kind of committing myself to self-improving, right?
You use the phrase "waste today." How would you describe a day that's wasted?
Oh, if you want to hear my gripe as of late is television. Like I was thinking about, and I'll be careful here because there's lots of great things. The kind of the media that is television, the format that is television. You can get a great sense of a concept of sharing education, thoughts, ideas through television. But if you really dig at it, if you really think about it, when you're watching television for 5-6 hours a day, or you're scrolling on your phone for 5 or 6 hours a day, you're just watching, stupid, very small little clips or things that are not informational, and you're just doing this throughout the whole day. It's like that's a waste to me, right? In terms of what you could be doing. Let me give you a concrete example. If I decide to binge watch Stranger Things, was it season 4 came out, which I do want to watch. I need to finish the part 2 came out. I want to finish part 2. So I'm not opposed to all television. I like it as an entertainment, but the fact is, should I spend all day doing this? Or should I spend, maybe I'll go watch some television while I'm working out, or something where I'm going to go, be trying to push myself. But a full day of just watching television where you kind of just check out. That's the worst thing you can do to me, is turning off your brain, man.
I'm gonna propose a slightly different angle of perceiving this, because in at least what I've come to use in terms of framing these experiences of downtime as you're discussing them, I think it all boils down to like intent. If you're intentionally watching something, I see no issue with it. I think the issue becomes, and I would support the exploration out of unintentional downtime, in the sense that you are not like, hey, I want to rest, I want to watch this show, I want to sit down, I want to have no responsibilities, I want to just relax for X amount of time or for the rest of the night. I see no issue with that. I see no issue with someone like, hey, I want to spend a whole day watching television. If that's what they want to do, and that's a little stay-at-home vacation for them, by all means, go for it. I wouldn't call that a wasted day, and I would almost go ahead.
I'll interject very quickly because I want to make it clear. This is a wasted day for me, for myself. To anybody else, whatever you choose to do and what you find meaning in, or purpose or value, like, those are great things, absolutely go do them. But for me, a day just spent watching television because I want to go relax, or, what is that? To me, I just turned off my brain. I just checked out.
You do that when you sleep. You're wasting your time sleeping.
Well, that's you're getting into. I mean, you're kind of getting into like splitting hairs, and you're talking about biological needs, right? I don't have a biological need to watch television. Not that I'm aware of. Maybe our caveman ancestors, they've got their flat screens, talking about QLED TVs. But yeah, I mean, do you actually really think for yourself, if you say, today I'm gonna go binge watch, a whole television for the whole day, and you look back at the end of the day and you go, that was well spent. For me, I can't do that. That's a waste. That's a waste of this life, this moment that I have, these moments that I have, if I'm doing that for the entire day. But go ahead. Sorry.
No. So I'm on TikTok periodically, and I think the way that I look at it is more so like, hey, I want to check out. I've just been grinding for an hour and a half, trying to figure out this issue. I just kind of give my brain a time to rest. And so I find that as a perfect outlet of like, hey, what time is it now? Okay, I'm giving myself 8 minutes. Oftentimes it goes over, and as long as I'm consciously aware of this, I'm like, hey, you've gone over your 8 minutes. I think that to me is like, okay, how do you feel? How does this feeling resonate with me? Do I feel like, oh man, like I'm going over way too long? The moment I think like, okay, I'm doing this too long, I stop. But I think to me, like where I've found effective is just being conscious during that activity, whatever you're doing for however long it is. You're like, I'm sitting watching TV. How does this feel with me? Does this feel nice? Does this feel relaxing? Am I enjoying it? Yes. Okay. I feel like I'm going to keep going. Sweet. Then I'm going to keep going. But the moment that teeters, or that'll change, like, I'm not really gaining enjoyment. I wanted to get these things done, and now I'm just kind of sitting here and it's on. Okay. I'm now going to change this activity and move on to something else because my needs and desires have changed.
I think the word we're talking about, or the differences that we're highlighting, moderation. That's what I'm talking about, which is things should be done in moderation, right? And I'd say that when you start, and that I know that's ambiguous and vague and not well defined, at least I don't know what a good definition of moderation is, but the fact is, if I spend all day sleeping, we both would say that that's probably not healthy.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but if I spend no time sleeping, we'd both say that, well, that's not healthy. So there's kind of a sweet spot. There's moderation, right? But I think that's kind of what we're touching upon. So I don't have any issue. I mean, I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of doing things that are kind of a waste of time, right? Or see, maybe they're a waste of time. I know. You're going to have a problem with that.
I think the crux that I was trying to get at was like, waste is, to me, a very strong word, and like only energy depleting. Like, sure, let's take the scenario where we just spent 4 hours doing a task that we may have like learned little from or didn't gain a whole lot from. We're at the end of this 4-hour task and we look back, you're like, wow, I just wasted 4 hours. What does that do to your psyche? That only just you're shooting yourself in the foot. You may look like, hey, like 4 hours is down the drain. Maybe I didn't gain as much from that as I would have liked. Now I'm going to focus more on the rest of the day today, if the following day, and to avoid that. And I would say that you could find that may even be beneficial to you to have spent too much downtime, because now that gives you motivation to spend less downtime in the future, right? It's this pendulum effect. So it's all about how you perceive it, right? If you call it a waste of time, then you're just feeling bad about yourself, and then you feel
that's
like
my
shit.
motivation. That's my motivation. I'm not even joking with in terms of I mean, fair enough. I could see that you take the somebody could actually have this inner monologue where they make themselves feel bad, and then they just demotivate themselves. They feel worthless because of their inner monologue, because of the way that they're phrasing things. But for me, I use that as motivation. Good. And I go, this was a waste of time. This is 30 minutes I could have spent doing something different or better. This is a waste for me. What am I doing? And that's actually some of the ways that I've been able to motivate myself, to push myself to do different things, to start habits that are healthy for me, or habits that I find are more objectively, better, or more objectively better for me than other things that I could be doing.
Yeah, I'm playing devil's advocate now. Where would you say that falls now in its importance to get you towards your goal? What if you didn't have this downtime? Where do you think how far your trajectory would change if you say, let's say you're just continually grinding and you never had any downtime, even if it was like of a perceived acceptable length or more, right? Like what if you framed, like this, sometimes it's good to have those moments where you're like, I just spent too much time doing this. Now you're like, your battery is like charged up super full longer than it would have been had you taken a shorter break, or a more like acceptable, air quotes, acceptable long break, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I'm okay with taking breaks. I take breaks. I still watch television. I do things in moderation. I'm just, I wouldn't say hypersensitive, but I'm very aware about where my time is going, for the most part, in terms of things that I've kind of told myself to watch out, or that have the side effect of turning myself off, so to speak, turning off that thought. Like television, for me, maybe that's just a difference in experience. Like, it is easy for me to watch television and just go, fuck, 3 hours just went by. Like, it's easy for me just to keep my brain shut off and do that. And that's not the life I want. That's not productive for me. That's not anything. I would much rather go actually learn how to weld. That's always been something that's on my bucket list, or actually do one of the projects that's kind of on my back burner, or what are the things I need to do around the house, right? I'm not saying don't have downtime. I understand that rest and relaxation, those are all important things, but I think it comes down to moderation. I think that's a big thing, which is just being very cognizant about the person you want to be and what you value, right? And are you working towards those things that you want? And in terms of kind of that view that I talked about, that it's the life philosophy about self-improvement. It's not watch television for 6 hours a day, 7 hours a day.
What would you say? So, I forget his name. Viktor Frankl in Man's Search of Meaning. Are you familiar with that book?
Man's Search. Oh, was this Man's Search of Meaning?
I believe it's called In Man's Search of Meaning. Search of Meaning, In Man's Search of Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Oh, just called Man's Search for Meaning. This is what's a correct literary adjective? I guess like a reflection of I believe it was a psychologist or psychiatrist in the early 1940s entering Nazi concentration camps.
Oh man.
And coming into this scenario like, okay, I am a trained professional in the human psyche. Let's here's one of the like most, I guess, what's the word I use? Like dire or, profound human psychological experiences. As horrible as the scenario is from an ethical perspective, there is some merit to the, to the situation and to that. And so it's a book of his reflections on that. He made it out alive.
You want to clarify that piece?
Essentially, he boiled it down to, at least with what resonated with me and what I take to this day, is that no one can take from you your mental capacity. Like, they can strip you down, they could throw you, getting torture you, but no one can take away from you your dignity. Like, no one can take your dignity away from you. You can hold that strong. And I think it was extremely profound message that he learned through that. I mean, that was one of the most dire, if not the most, I'm sure there's some probably equally, if not more atrocious human rights violations way back in the day that may not have been documented, but I guess on a global scale, genocide's pretty high up on that scale. But right, he went through genocide and through a trained professional lens and came out with that learning. I think is quite profound. He has a quote. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking about the professionally, how challenging or how hard that must be. I mean, I live a pretty sheltered life in terms of what, to the degrees of suffering or the even seeing violence or things that are outside my imagination of horrific. You hear about stories, but going into these concentration camps, fuck, you must want to lose all faith in humanity just seeing the things that we would do. Anyways, I was just thinking about how hard that would be professionally to take kind of this objective kind of a step back view and just analyze this to, and not just be furious, disgusted. I don't know that the different words that would come to mind, but I would imagine, because I've heard stories from some of these World War II documentaries that you hear from the soldiers, and they describe it in terms of some of the most horrific detail that you could ever imagine, these conditions. And to actually be, in the academic field of sciences, where I'm actually trying to study and understand and not just say, what a fucking, horrible thing this was, and actually draw things out of it. What a challenge, what strength he must have had to actually go through that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I highly recommend reading it. He has a quote. I'm kind of curious your take on it. Is that a man, and I may not quote this perfectly, but the idea is essentially, the man who has no purpose seeks a life of pleasure.
No, those I have to chew on it for a while. I like it at face value, but I gotta let it simmer.
What are the first sort of knee jerk thoughts that come to mind when you hear that quote?
You know what's funny is that skeptical mindset. The first thing, so that's whether I think you and me have a little bit of a disagreement about if that's necessarily the best way to approach new information that you're given, which is from a point of skepticism or not. But that was instantly my thought is, how can I see where this doesn't hold up, or how isn't this valid, or do I agree with that? I instantly try to apply kind of the negative to it. So I don't know. You tell me. You've had time to think about it. Say it again. Say the quote one more time.
Again, so it's not verbatim, but it's essentially, a man who has no purpose seeks pleasure in life. If you have no purpose, you are one to seek pleasure. Let me as you chew on it a little bit, let me read it verbatim. It's going to be essentially the same. Pleasure is and must remain a side effect or byproduct and is destroyed and spoiled to the degree to which it is made a goal in itself. Wow, that's much more.
I was going to say, you really distilled the shit out of that.
I saw it on Instagram. I follow some.
I feel like a spaceship. I feel like a spaceship went in and a horse and buggy came out.
So there's
shit. Okay.
There's two. Okay, so now on Goodreads, this is one that I've read. When a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure. I don't know if you said both or one is a paraphrase version. So man's search for meaning, I think this is, I don't know. Is that pleasure is and must remain a side effect or byproduct and is destroyed and spoiled to the degree to which it has made a goal in itself.
Well, what about for you? What do you think of that?
I think of the hedonic treadmill. Are you familiar with that heuristic?
No, it does sound familiar. Hedonic. I recognize the word from somewhere, but go ahead.
I'm going to read the description from Google so I don't miss anything. Is the observed tendency of humans to quickly return to a relatively stable level of happiness despite major positive or negative events or life changes.
Oh, I think I've heard it used kind of where it's, what is it, homeostasis, where something like that are used to describe that. Oh, hedonic treadmill. Okay, I like that.
And so I think that when you set yourself up in these situations of extreme pleasure, you just change your baseline and it doesn't become pleasurable anymore, right? Like you think of Jeff and all his riches. This is the other Jeff, not you, Jeff. Jeff, Mr. Bezos. And he's like, he's afforded probably the most luxury one on this planet can attain. $250 million yacht, if I'm not mistaken, where he has to discuss with like a local government about they have to deconstruct a bridge in order to get it out of a port. Like that's just an unfathomable amount of wealth.
It's kind of like a maximus, like you've maximized, like you're at your maximum of happiness that you could try to derive or pull from just getting
material.
Money.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. Like you have to go get it from somewhere else because you've obtained such a level that there's just, I'm sure from him, another $1 million doesn't mean anything. Like it doesn't mean anything in terms of,
So let's think of his perspective for a moment. I love this because so many people fall into the trap of, once I have money, then everything is good. If I had a new car, a new house, whatever, and put that aside.
There's a degree of that.
There is a degree, right? But it's fleeting. You have this novelty factor of, look at this car. This is amazing. I love this car. To me, the novelty of obtaining, it's not that there's a quote that describes this very well. It's like, it's not the having, it's the getting.
As long as we're okay with giving, like, let's ground ourselves, which is there's a certain amount of money in a modern society, like
$70,000.
I was going to say 70, and I think they show that it peaks that somebody at like $70,000
it's linear,
is no more happier than 100.
Yeah, I guess they're both linear. It's like exponential. Like it's an asymptote at like 90,000 maybe, and it's just like once you get up to 70, it's just like the gains are like diminishing. You can pay rent, like maybe.
I don't think they're necessary.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you're right. No, you're good. Keep going.
But like you could pay rent. You probably have like at least a couple month like savings in terms of emergencies. You have some cash where like if you have to pay the car bill, you're not like, fuck, or how am I going to pay rent? All these like things that come up in life, which I'm extremely lucky and grateful for to be able to experience. So I live a lifestyle like that where any unexpected expense is not going to at all infringe upon my daily necessities in terms of rent, food, shelter, electricity. Essentially, I'm taking a piss in a can right now, Thomas.
That's right. That's right. No, I'm getting a refill, and I figured I should start drinking early.
That's good. Get the water.
That's right.
But yeah, essentially, once you pass a certain point, I mean, so let's jump back to the example of just Jeff Bezos, or like attaining Like there is a fleeting sense of like, wow, look at this. I got this cool thing. I got this new car. I got this new house. Like, wow, this is awesome. And now it becomes normal to you. Everyone's like, oh, cool. Everyone has said you surround yourself and said, oh, cool. It's really nice. Giving you whatever compliments that you appreciate. Hopefully aren't like needing.
Check out my new cock.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah,
man,
yeah,
look at my new cock.
Sick, man. That's fucking big. 2 inches? Damn. That's fucking huge. 2 inches.
There's a remote for it? It's remote control. It's auto start?
Robotic.
Robocock.
Yeah, but okay, so jump back to the example of Jeff Bezos. He has.
Yeah, we grounded. We're grounded. We're aligned. I agree.
There's a lot of people out there where you give them like a BMW, a Porsche, like I would say entry level, like luxurious car. No offense. I mean, they're great cars, but as opposed to like a hypercar, like a Lamborghini or like a higher end Porsche or McLaren, whatever, somewhere around that $80,000. Like I think a lot of people would be like, whoa, this is really cool for a very short amount of time, maybe depending on the person. They'd be elated. Wow, I got a new car. Cool. They're excited. They feel good. And then after a while, that just becomes like the normal day to day to them. And now they're looking for the next thing, right? Like think of Jeff. He's got everything he possibly or can get, anything that money can buy. If someone manufactures something, he can get it. Someone builds or designs something, he can buy it. Anything on this planet that he wants, opposed from like, I don't know, maybe it's like a massive office building or that's legal, that is open to at least some subset of consumers. Some things aren't, like, and probably some things that even aren't even open to consumers, but I digress. You can have it. Like, think about that. There's no thing materialistic that he can gain that he cannot gain. And you think about some people like, wow, there's always this like sort of dream, like, oh, I'll have this brand new house or I'll have this new car and then I'll be sick. It's just like goalposts way down, like, oh, that gives a motivation to a degree of these things that they'll be able to obtain, which I think is, I would caution away from, obtaining. I would definitely steer people away from having materialistic goals as opposed to like self-growth goals. I think it's great, if you want to like, oh, I'm going to get this new car, like, sweet. If you want to get a new car, sweet, new house, whatever. But yeah, caution from that being your pure, biggest derivation of like meaning and happiness. But yeah, you take him, like, that's a great philosophical exam or experiment almost. Like, talk to Jeff, like, hey man, you can get whatever you want now. How's your meaning of life changed? I mean, I'm sure it hasn't changed. I'm sure before he got that, I would imagine he's had a pretty stable and sound perspective and paradigm of what it means to live a happy and fulfilling life. Because then it's almost like a dead end of sorts, right? Like, there's nowhere up from Jeff. And if you're like always constantly looking for that next thing, there's nowhere to go. Think about that. And think about like, hey, there's nothing more I can possibly buy. Like, now that's a perfect experience because it's so easy when you're down, like really down on the economic totem pole of like, wow, look at all these cool things I can buy. Ooh, I can get, because globally, we're pretty high up there. We're in the top 1% globally for sure. I think everyone in America is in the top 1% globally. I don't know. I think it's like a $30,000 salary is like top 1%, if I'm not mistaken. And, yeah, some people are just like, oh, a brand new floor. Like, I want a new floor. I don't want dirt floors anymore. Like, I want like a tile floor, like a new kitchen. There are some materialistic things that can drive a sense of joy. But yeah, I just think, tying it all back to search of pleasure, like it's a never ending, it's a never ending pursuit. Like, no matter where you go. We were talking about this earlier. Like, even, it's just, you're just going to reset your baseline. And if anything, you're now like pigeonholing yourself, because if you don't, every other experience of life where you don't have this, now it's so much easier to perceive the delta. If you drive a Lamborghini every day to work and then you have to fly, and for whatever reason, like a friend of yours is giving you a ride in his Honda Civic that's like 10 years old, you're like, oh man, this is not a Lamborghini, and you just like, perhaps it would test you a lot more in your ability to appreciate things. I think for what they and I would say it's really easy for people. I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who do have material wealth who aren't able to appreciate everything regardless of its relative value or relative value. And it's a huge test because now you're like, oh, I've lived this, ivory tower lifestyle. Now when I need to walk on the streets, I'm like, oh man, I gotta like smell like smoke, and it's I think a fantastic test for those people.
I agree with, I think, pretty much everything that you're saying. And then the example that I'd have that kind of resonated with me, where I started to actually first take a step back and recognize that. So I went through a change professionally where I was making fairly good money, and I had ample wealth where I didn't really even have to worry about, I didn't have gave zero fucks about where money was going for the most part. So I was just good to go, right? Net was always getting more than was going out, so we're good. I'm saving up a fair amount.
But to be fair, I mean, for context, you were never a really big spender.
No, I bought. I mean, in terms of for my personal hobbies, I spent a fair amount on that.
Well, a few grand. Like we were talking numbers, that. Tens of thousands, like on the 3D printers.
Oh yeah, I'd say it's in like the tens of thousands in terms of if you tally up the equipment that I've got.
Like what? Like all machinery?
Oh man, I should go take it out there. We could do like a little tour. Fuck, you name it. Well, you got the CNC machine, we got the resin printer, we got the 3D printer, we got the laser cutter. Tool. Oh, you should see my tool chest. Oh man, back that motherfucker up. But all those things, and they do bring, in terms of the there's kind of a balancing act there where there are lots of valuable skills that can be learned through, like the fact that I have the 3D printer. I really enjoy that. I really enjoy having a 3D printer. It's changed the way I think about solving problems in terms of kind of, especially when I'm trying to design something and
trying to
model
blocks,
it in my mind's eye.
Oh
yeah, you should see the cock blocker mitten that I have now.
Hell yeah!
It's a full mitt that's actually printed out of You got rid of the material because
it's a mitten now, not a 5-digit one. Did you have to shorten up on the material there?
Yeah. So originally I had it seemed like a good idea, and I can go a little bit into the math behind why I had the Freddy Krueger claws. As far as that kind of a design, didn't work out well. For a couple different reasons.
Sure.
For the cock that was being blocked and the blocker.
Highly specialized piece of equipment.
Highly specialized.
Yeah.
But in terms of value and meaning, I had gone for just because where my focus and my energies was going in terms of what I was getting back into or what I was spending time on. Something that started to come up more and more often was to actually go out into wilderness, do some hikes, things like that. And out of all the things that I spend money on day over day, I really enjoyed how much peace and comfort and self-reflection I got when just going out for a free hike and just go looking at nature. Like I spent maybe $5 for the pass, if anything, but there was that happiness, that bliss, or whatever you want to call that, transcendence of being in nature and just kind of observing things and thinking and just being present that I'm alive and getting to experience this right now, this tiny little slice that I'm here. Like that provided tremendously more than some of the toys or some of the money that I've spent kind of frivolously. And it's a really good reminder that it's easy to lose sight of it too. It's really easy to lose sight of it and just be focused on material things. I need the iPhone Plus 10, 27, 36, 2.
Says a man with an Android.
Says a man with an Android. That's right.
There was a study. I don't know if it was a study or just I don't know if it was like a controlled study or more so just a happenstance discovery that two people with similar, if not identical, injuries were in hospital rooms, one with a window to the courtyard where they could see trees, another without a window to see any trees, or perhaps there's a window to some building, but essentially couldn't see nature, couldn't see trees. The person with the access to the trees visually healed faster than the person who didn't have access visually to this.
Just at the face of it, I'm good with that. I would be interested to dig a little bit more into
Me too.
it, like how they actually can say like the statistical significance or how they actually like quantified it. But I think that seems reasonable, right? It doesn't seem unreasonable. Yeah.
There's a healing power to it. And I think it's just like a level setter, right? It's like this is where we came from. The trees and the grass and the dirt.
Do you think it's more that, or that like a consequence of being surrounded by that makes you kind of shift perspective?
Yes.
And
I think it's a
that
perspective
shift in perspective. Yeah, I think so too. I absolutely know that when I get in my head and I'm stressed out about something, and I can be vicious, in terms of, again, your inner monologue can be like the worst fucking person, the worst fucking voice you've ever heard, piece of shit kind of a thing. And it makes it so much worse. And there can be such a difference in terms of just how you frame things. It's a framing problem for even the worst situations that I've been in. Granted, I don't necessarily think, I just need to frame this differently every single time. But when I do, that makes a pretty big difference, right? How you frame it internally, and it helps with kind of overcoming it.
Because I feel like for the vast majority of our time, and when I say our, I mean like, I don't know, our DNA, 99.8% of our DNA, whether or not it's in Homo sapiens or it's in Homo erectus, if that's a branch, sounds familiar, but
Homo erectus, before us, you're good.
Okay, cool. And then before us, previous prior evolutions of our current form, we didn't really have thoughts all that much. Thoughts is a lot more of a modern sort of circumstance. And I think going back to nature is just this recognition of we don't need to think to be. We can be without thoughts. I think that's the most blissful and underlying like peaceful state, is just to be without thoughts. Of course, thinking is relevant today now, but in our constructions that we've made in terms of work and navigating, and we can't just kind of like thoughtlessly move around. That would be dangerous in some regards. But back in the day, like animals, I mean, you think about their perspective. It's like they don't have to think like, oh man, I gotta be a better wolf. This wolf pack is just like this is not a better wolf. I don't like these wolf pups. Like, I want to get rid of them. And these guys are like, hey, can't get rid of these wolf pups, man. Like, otherwise you're going to wolf jail. They don't have those. I was just like, oh, I'm hungry. It's just a lot more limbic system. I don't think thoughts arise out of our limbic system. If we can find an origin of our thoughts in our brain. I don't know if I have a feeling that's not been found, a specific origin, but like limbic system, or the thoughts that you and I are familiar with. Animals don't really have thoughts that we're aware of, at least. And so I think going back to nature kind of reminds us of like, hey, this is where we've been the past 100,000 years. Like, sure, we may not be there now, but like we've gotten here through this place, and we can always come back to it and just recognize that we can just be. We don't need to be anywhere else than right here, right now. It just brings you to the present moment. I think it helps bring your focus back to the present moment. Which, to be fair, you can do anywhere, but it just helps a lot when you have this environment that is highly conducive of it and very calm. Yeah.
I've got one, and I've brought it up before, and I will probably make this, I guess, our ending segue here in terms of, so we won't spend too much time on it. But try to imagine, and I haven't been able to do this. I haven't been able to kind of put into words or to really do it its justice when I think about it, which is, if you didn't have a language, if let's say that you're the Dane, I'm assuming you can't be the exact Dane you are now, but go back 10,000 years or before language was really invented, or when it started to be spread. But what was your internal monologue? Is it just, do you trade the internal monologue with just feelings and sensations? And I mean, that's what's present all the time? Because it can't be that there's just nothing there. Like, we're still humans, we're still conscious, we still are aware of our own behaviors. So
there are
it must
some people
just
who don't
be-
have internal monologues actually to this day. No joke.
You're getting on the extreme cases.
But
yeah, it is interesting. And what's the other one? Sorry, they can't. I forget what the condition is, but you can't visualize things in your mind's eye. There's just nothing there. It doesn't even make sense to me how you actually try to like reconcile that with what that means to you and how you would behave. But going back to that, so no language. Like what do you think that internal monologue would not internal monologue? What do you think that experience would be like?
It'd be peaceful as shit, man. I feel like a lot of people would be a lot happier, you know?
Yeah.
They're just being present all the time. I mean, that's what Eckhart totally talks about. And so a lot of like Buddhist philosophy and all meditation is. It's just like be present here right now. You don't need to think about what you're going to do tomorrow. You don't think about your career. You don't need to think about your clothes, your social status, any of this other nonsense, this other societal constructs we've created.
Dane, we need to get off this planet eventually. Like there's an expiration date. We're good. You and me are fine. Children. But there's an expiration date. We got to figure that out. So we shouldn't just be content with everything. So I don't know. For the future of humanity, somebody needs to be uncontent with where we're at. Elon Musk.
Yeah, that's good. I think just being aware of it, though, being aware of this desire being a contract with yourself to be unhappy until some results are found.
Yeah,
that's fine.
And it's
still conscious of it.
It's not, and I think the part of what you and me both kind of accepted as part of our own philosophy is that there isn't some ultimate attainment of happiness. It's not just some switch that gets flipped. It's always in a sense moving, right? And recognizing that is, I think, important because it helps put things in perspective in terms of how you want to prioritize and kind of, rationalize things.
Yeah. Sweet. Well, that's all we have time for today for episode 5. Thomas the Cockblock going into the weeds and touched upon some of the abstract math upon his pursuits of higher degree and higher education of cockblocking. More to be told in future episodes. Thanks for joining, folks. See you next one.